Message from Starfleet Command, top priority.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 110, featuring the top 5 computer crises. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse. I am the host of the TrekRanks podcast, and tonight we are doing a very, very cool topic for episode 110. That's episode 110, or you might say episode 110 or 11001001. It's episode 110, and we're doing our top 5 computer crises. Computers are always breaking down or causing some kind of drama on Star Trek, so we're gonna talk computer crises, and it's gonna be hard to say. I'm gonna keep trying. You want to say it singular, crisis, but it's crises, and it's gonna be a great topic. So we've got 2 great guests. Our first is our returning favorite, the host of Weekly Trek, Mr. Alex Perry. Alex, welcome back.
It is good to be back, Jim.
It has been too long. So your longest drought. Your last appearance was episode 92.
Good Lord.
I know. It's like that's like 18 episodes. That's a lot. And our second guest, making her 5th TrekRanks appearance, it's Dana Kenedy. Dana, welcome.
Hello.
It's good to have you here. I realized after I asked you that your first appearance was with Alex on Enterprise Underrated back on episode 46.
Yes, that was my first ever podcast appearance.
Oh, cool. And you were on our epic Scenes on Earth episode, which is one of our favorites. All right, let's get into our TrekRanks recalibration and get into this topic.
Let's start with something small, like a recalibration of the EPS manifolds.
As regular listeners will know by now, General Order number 1 of the TrekRanks charter is that we love Trek. We love to rank Trek via some deep dive topics just to get the conversation started. And remember, it's not about the ranks. That's just an excuse to talk about Star Trek. Because, as Mr. Spock himself has said, our show is all about
infinite diversity in infinite combinations, symbolizing the elements that create truth and beauty.
No wrong answer. It's not about being right or definitive in any way. It's just about sharing the things we love about Trek, and we love it all from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise and the Kelvin timeline, and now Discovery, Short Treks, Picard, Lower Decks. It's all fair game here on the TrekRanks podcast.
Black alert. Black alert.
And a reminder that this episode of TrekRanks is current through 801 episodes of Star Trek, which currently translates through the 3rd season of Star Trek Discovery. And a usual reminder that we use episodes as a shorthand, but the 13 films are always in play as well.
Have boosted power to the communications bandwidth.
We appreciate that, Mr. Kim. And you can find TrekRanks on Subspace at TrekRanks.com. And you can contact me directly on Twitter at TrekRanks or at Enterprise Extra. You can also call and leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. Okay, Alex and Dana, let everybody know how they can get a hold of you on Subspace so we can get rolling here. Alex.
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Alexander T. Perry. And if you're interested in all the news that's fit to talk about in 40 minutes or less every week, you can find my weekly Star Trek news show at Weekly Trek.
A must listen. And Dana, how about you? Static Warp Bubble.
Yes, so Static Warp Bubble on Twitter, but no E at the end, and Static Warp Bubble on Tumblr with dashes and an E. And I don't have a podcast, so that's it.
But you have been on TrekRanks many times, and we love it.
Yep.
Okay, let's get into our level 1 diagnostic to break down computer crises.
Run a level 1 diagnostic series. Come.
Okay, so right off the bat, we've never done this before, but as part of this week's diagnostic cycle to break down what we mean by computer crises, we are taking tonight's namesake episode off the board, and I've instructed our panel to not pick episode 11001001 and the binars, since that's a little too on the nose for this topic. That is the ultimate king of computer crises. So beyond the fact that the binars are off the table here, everything else is completely eligible. Computer crises is really up to you to define. Does it have to be a computer technological issue? Could it be a computer virus? And an alien entity inside a computer. We've seen that a ton of times on Trek. Artificial intelligence. Everything's on the board. Are you destroying a computer or are you building a computer? I mean, there are so many ways to look at this in terms of this topic. So it's all definitely in play tonight, and we're going to find out how our panel is looking at it in a minute with our prime directives. But first, I want to circle back on the binars really quick in episode 11001001, which is just fun to say. That's an episode that I remember seeing it and thinking I was just blown away by it. And then early on, it was like one of the best season 1 episodes, but then it kind of started slipping down for me a little bit in my ranks and the way I looked at it, because for someone who watched TNG when it was first syndicated, it was on all the time, right? Like by the time you got to season 3, you're watching the season 1 reruns. So you're seeing that episode all the time. And I just remember thinking that it kind of dropped, I think, just because I saw it so many times. But now, 30 years later and kind of getting over if you were burned out on it a little bit, I think it holds up so well. It's just an awesome early season episode that kind of gets tagged with that season 1 label a little bit. So Alex and Dan, I want to ask you guys, we're going to get a 5 words and a hashtag from everybody on episode 11001001 and just get your quick thoughts on it. So Alex, what's your take on that episode?
I love it. One of the strongest episodes in Next Generation season 1. I love that opening shot of the Enterprise D approaching the starbase. It is an episode that paints with a big brush. I mean, there are some really iconic moments and sequences. Yeah, I think it's one of the best that season 1 has to offer.
Yeah, it is a really broad scope. So what's your 5 words of a hashtag?
Okay, 5 words. Synchronized walking wins gold medal. Hashtag brunettes and jazz.
Oh my God! Synchronized what? Is this a Boimler reference? Oh
no, this is a reference to that shot where after Picard and Riker exit the holodeck and they're on their way to engineering, there's this one shot of them walking down the corridor and they are like in complete synchronization, legs swinging at the same time, arms swinging at the same time. It is incredible.
Yeah, no, I knew the shot. I was just thinking that Boimler's got his speed walk thing down. So yes. I wonder if that inspires you. That's brilliant. I love it. Dana, how about you? What's your take on this episode and your 5 words and a hashtag?
My 5 words are distract Riker with Jazz Babe and hashtag rapid binary chattering, because that's what the Netflix subtitles said when they were talking to each other. I thought that was great.
Oh, that's the caption?
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
But it's a really good episode. I think, like you guys said, it's one of the standouts from season 1. And I think it really kind of showed us what to expect from Trek. It's really high concepts and good characters. And I loved Picard just saying, you could have just asked.
Right. I do. I think the binars are really, they're just sitting there to be kind of reinvented in this new era of Trek. They would be really cool to see these days.
Yeah.
Okay. So my 5 words and a hashtag, a computer generated gin joint, hashtag, you might have said no, which of course is, which is a no-brainer. Okay, let's get out of here and get into our prime directives.
But what you're proposing is exactly the kind of tampering the prime directive prohibits.
Okay, so Alex, let's start with you. So many ways to look at how a computer problem or a computer crisis, how did you break it down for your prime directive?
Okay, so this is probably my most specific prime directive I've done for an episode of TrekRanks to date.
So like narrow?
Yes. Correct, in that I could only come up with 5 episodes that fit the bill.
Ooh, interesting.
So I decided that if 11001001 was off the board, I was going to try and pick 5 episodes that had many of the same components to that episode. And so I came up with 3 sort of like pieces of 11001001 that I needed to have reflected in other episodes in order to make my list.
Wow.
So, number 1, the crisis has to be on the main ship. So sorry, Dreadnought, you're not getting included. Number 2, it must be a crisis that involves the holodeck, but it can't be confined entirely to the holodeck itself. So if it's just a crisis that impacts the people on the holodeck, doesn't count.
Okay.
And 3, An organic being must be ultimately responsible for the computer crisis. So no true artificial intelligences, because it was the Binars who were responsible in 11001001. So there has to be that organic component hanging around behind it. Now, once you hear the choices, you will think a couple of them probably stretch that definition. But hey, I needed 5, so I came up with 5.
I love this. That's so good. I'm kind of similar in terms of how narrow I tried to get. But Dana, how about you? How did you break it down?
So, I'm the complete opposite. Because Jim literally asked me yesterday.
Yes, by the way, Dana is a late fill-in, so she is killing it with this.
Yep. So I was working until 5 yesterday. So I had this window of like 2 hours to get everything together. So I told my mom, I was like, okay, so I'm going to do this. And she's like, but that's every episode. So that didn't narrow it down. So really for me, if there was a technological issue, it counted. It didn't necessarily have to be life or death situations. So crisis is sort of really loosely defined here. So if there's a problem with the computer, or anything with the computer, it counted. And I went with my first gut choices.
That's awesome. That's a great way to look at it.
So it might be really loosely defined, and if I had like 3 weeks, I would probably have a completely different set of answers. But these are the first ones that came into my mind.
I think this is going to help this show that you're super broad and that Alex is super narrow. And so I'm pretty narrow on mine too. So I really struggled with finalizing my prime directive because I was looking at it from so many different ways with AIs, androids, robots. I really was fixated on alien infested computer because that's kind of a recurring thing that happens. Computers that are running societies, computers that like simulated realities and holodecks. All these things were on this long list that I made. And I eliminated things like holodecks. So Alex, sounds like we might be completely disparate here. I eliminated AI, androids, robots, things like that. And I decided, and by the way, I went back and forth like 3 times. For a while, I had one way and then I went another way. I decided at the end that my 5 picks were all going to have one thing in common. And that one thing is a really big clue for my list. The common thread is that all the computers in my crises have a name. So that is my
that's cool.
Except maybe one. So I'm cheating a little bit like you did, Alex. So this is awesome. Okay, let's do this first Kudecaton. Introduce us to the new order of things.
It'll be alphas like us that determine the future of this quadrant. That will be the new order of things.
Thank you, First Kudecaton. And as always, just a quick reminder on how we're going to go through the order of things. First, we'll reveal our top 5 computer crisis and the specific reasons we're highlighting it in the specific episode in which it appeared. And at the end, we'll ask everyone for a few secondary system selections for the picks that just missed our list. And as always, if we have any duplicate picks, make sure you listen for the Defiant Torpedo. Okay, Alex, let's start with you. Your number 5 pick for top 5 computer crises.
Okay, number 5 pick, 5-word summary. Ship battle creates murderous badgie. Hashtag that fact wasn't fun. My pick is Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1, Episode 6, Terminal Provocations.
Fantastic. Badgie gets a mention. I did think of Badgie.
Yep. So crisis on the main ship. It takes place on the Cerritos. It involves the holodeck, but it's not confined entirely to the holodeck. And an organic being must ultimately be responsible. And in this case, it is Fletcher. So, and he sucks. This is just a fun episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. I think the creation of the murderous Clippy equivalent in Badgie was an inspired choice by the Lower Decks writing team, and I am very much hoping that he becomes a recurring villain into the future of Lower Decks as well.
I think the fact we saw him in the finale means we're going to see him more and more, and all I got to say about Fletcher is sloop that loop! Fletcher! Okay, Dana, what's your take on Terminal Provocations and Badgie?
So I may or may not have this as one of my picks later on because it's a lot of fun.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So Dana, how about you? What's your number 5 pick?
My number 5 words, is I think, therefore I am. Hashtag escape the matrix. And it is, of course, Ship in a Bottle from Next Gen.
Yes.
I think this episode is actually the one of Next Generation that I've watched the most. Not because it's my favorite, but because literally every time I turn on the TV and Next Gen is on, there's a 9 out of 10 chance it's this episode. So it defies all rules of probability, and I've seen it so many times. And it's such a good holodeck gone wrong episode. It's just very Next Gen.
And I like because it's not just the holodeck, it's the computer is created.
Yeah.
It's a computer created problem. So it totally
fits.
Yeah, I mean, Moriarty is so memorable.
Yeah.
Another couple of shout outs in Lower Decks as well for Moriarty. I love this pick. Alex, what's your take?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite episodes of The Next Generation. I rewatch it constantly, and I'm really glad you picked it, Dana, because it doesn't quite fit my prime directive. I suppose you could say that Reginald Barclay is the organic being who's ultimately responsible, but I decided that was a little bit too much of a stretch. Otherwise, this would have been my number one choice far and away. I love everything about this episode. I love Daniel Davis and Sir Patrick Stewart, facing each other down, but in a way that isn't just like a villain and a hero. It's very nuanced, and it is really, you do really empathize for Moriarty in the situation that he finds himself in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. I thought this one was going to fit your criteria there, Alex. So yeah, I guess it's not really created by an organic. Well,
I mean, it sort of does, because Barclay sets off the whole thing because he accidentally turns on Moriarty.
Right.
But it's definitely that is a loose interpretation of an organic being ultimately responsible.
I like it.
Was it Data who said? No, it was Geordi.
Oh, it was Geordi who originally created it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, who a villain that can compete with Data or something. So you could find a loophole there.
Well, I'm glad you picked this because it doesn't. This one was borderline for me in terms of having a name and kind of not being necessarily holodeck. So I definitely thought about it. Okay, let's go to my round 5 pick, 5 words and a hashtag. This is my only one with a cheat where it's not really have a name. 5 words and a hashtag. Your inquiry was not recognized. Hashtag one pan-fried catfish. And of course, it's Enterprise Season 2. It's Dead Stop. The computerized repair station, just as this massive computer crisis that the Enterprise finds themselves in the middle of. Super popular episode, but just the fact that they kind of board this thing, they turn the ship over to it to fix it, and then they realize about halfway through that, oh, this is just one big massive computer. There's nobody here. There's nobody controlling it, and it is really kind of having a way with our ship, or it can do whatever it wants with what it's offered us. And of course it kills, or it doesn't kill him, but it takes Travis to help fuel the station in a very macabre setting with all the characters in that triage or whatever, however you want to call it. Anyway, just a fun episode. One of my favorite things about it, I've picked it a few times, is that it's just got this classic TOS triumphant feeling of Archer, T'Pol, and Trip really working together and kind of replicating the original Kirk, Spock, and McCoy chemistry. I've always loved that. I love the mystery and the execution and the computer voice with Roxanne Dawson. Just one of my favorites. Alex, what's your take?
Yeah, this is a great episode, and if it wasn't on my list for underrated episodes of Enterprise, I request the ability to go back and amend that list, because Dead Stop is one of the best episodes of Enterprise, in my opinion. It's certainly one of the best episodes of Season 2. It is a little bit creepy, a little bit macabre, but also at the same time, while being, perfectly clean and pristine, I think it was a really inspired choice for them to do that kind of very white, sort of sterilized set on which this alien space station takes place. And, I think the only thing I regret about it is that we didn't get a follow-up to discover more about the people who were ultimately behind the space station. I think that would have been cool. I know they did that in the books, but they didn't do it in canon.
Would have been cool to see a follow-up. I can confirm that none of us picked any elements of Dead Stop in our Enterprise underrated episode. Dana, what's your take on this one?
I really like this episode. I almost picked it for my list, so it's in my secondary systems. I think what stands out to me is the visuals in it, because it's such a bright episode with like the dark theme, and it also contrasts really well with like the darkness and loneliness of space, and it's like fake nice, if that makes sense.
Well said. I think that makes perfect sense. It's just got this, there's an ominous feeling of something's wrong here. This is,
yeah.
I mean, there's a moment where Archer brilliantly says, don't you think, a few hundred liters of plasma or deuterium, whatever, is kind of a bargain for what this ship is? They're going to fix it in like 32 hours, and the ship is just completely destroyed.
It's sort of like, it's like every interaction you've ever had with any big corporation, in some way you are getting absolutely screwed, so but they're doing it with such a like polite fake smile.
It's like whenever you're buying a car, it's like,
right? Exactly.
You think you're getting this great deal. You're not. It's not happening.
That's a good analogy.
Okay, Alex, what's your number 4 pick?
Okay, 5-word summary. The ship in the bottle, hashtag, but not Dana's bottle. It's Star Trek, The Next Generation, Season 3, Episode 6, Booby Trap.
Ooh, what a great pick. How interesting.
Ship in the bottle. Oh, good Lord. Didn't anybody here build ships in bottles when they were boys?
I did not play with toys.
I was never a boy. I did, sir.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Proceed.
I did. I really did. Ships and bottles. It's great fun.
Yeah, so we've got our crisis on the main ship. Obviously, all takes place on the Enterprise D. The crisis involves the holodeck in, maybe a borderline creepy way, but it's still an enjoyable segment of the episode. And an organic being must ultimately be responsible. And it's the, it's not the Promelians, it's the, why am I blanking? The, something like that. Basically, the people who set up.
Who captured, who set up the Promelians.
Right, who set up the Promelians and created the booby trap that the Enterprise ultimately falls into. This is a really fun episode of Season 3. It's cool to see Picard pilot the Enterprise out of the booby trap. It's really cool to see, it's all about sort of problem solving. There's no kind of might makes right attitude around this episode. And actually their initial kind of, plans, a lot of which involve shooting things or just going faster and faster, aren't ultimately the way to solve the booby trap. It requires them to be really smart in order to get out of it. And it's a fabulous episode as a result. And it's our first trip to Utopia Planitia, even in holodeck form. And that's very cool.
There's nothing cooler than Picard piloting the Enterprise out of that asteroid field. It's one of the highlights of the first few seasons of TNG. So memorable, so well filmed. You feel like you're in the ship when it's spinning around and he's using the force to pull him away. And then the whole solving of the crisis with Geordi and Leah Brahms. So clever. I love this pick. Really outside the box. Dana, what's your take?
I really like this one. I like Dr. Brahms. She's a really cool person that I don't think we saw enough of. So the element though that tied back to the Binars episode, was it the Picard piloting the ship?
Oh yeah, that works too. Actually, yeah. That is in both of them.
That's true. Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. Okay.
That's amazing. Okay, Booby Trap, fantastic. Love the Promelians. Also one of the most underrated ship designs ever. I love that ship. Don't know why, just really very cool and unique looking. Dana, what's your number 4 pick?
Number 4, 5 words, lockdown on Deep Space Nine, #attention Bajoran workers.
Yes.
And it is civil defense.
Yes.
Which, fantastic episode. I love episodes that are just kind of, you're stuck in one place and you have to figure something out in a short period of time. And this is just a really, I don't want to say fun Deep Space Nine episode, but it also is a kind of fun Deep Space Nine episode.
Oh,
you have
so much fun.
Complete sleaze. You have Garrick. It's great. And I love Jake and Cisco. They're the cutest together. So He has everything.
Yeah, I love the Rube Goldberg nature of this episode, where it's just one thing leading to another, all these problems compounding each other. This is my first mention of this, Alex. This was on my secondary systems and on the list of things I couldn't pick because it was picked twice on our Buzzer Beaters episode, which was Alex's last show, because it fit. I mean, this is like the quintessential Computer Crisis episode. They literally have to figure out how to beat this computer program. But a couple of us picked it on Buzzer Beaters. So I said, I'm going to keep that one off my list. I love it. I'm so glad somebody picked it, because it's literally, you can't draw it up anymore for a computer crisis is coming out of nowhere and being something you have to solve.
Wait a minute.
Unauthorized computer entry detected in OR Processing Unit 5. Enter access code. Incorrect code. You have 5 seconds to enter correct access code.
Or what? I don't know. I better stop it.
Warning. Worker revolt in progress in OR Processing Unit 5. Security countermeasures initiated.
What the hell?
Bashoran workers, your attention, please. Your attempt to seize control of this facility is going to fail. You are valuable workers, and we wish you no harm. However, if you do not return control of this unit to your Cardassian supervisors, we will be forced to take action. You have 8 minutes to make your decision.
Alex, what's your take?
Yeah, me too. It's off my list for the same reason. Doesn't fit the Prime Directive, and also because I just picked it in the last episode I was on. But I love Civil Defense. I mean, Dana, so far you've picked Ship in a Bottle and Civil Defense. You're 2 for 5 of my top 5 comfort food episodes from the Star Trek franchise. I love Civil Defense. It is so much fun. It's definitely one of the most rewatchable episodes in Trek history. Okay, let's go to my round 4. 5 words and a hashtag. I got to do an impersonation here. Learn to be our enemy, hashtag, before you learn what it means to be our friend. And this is from TOS Season 3. It's For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky, and the computer is the Oracle. The Oracle, and it was created by the creators. It's a Trek classic. It's one of my favorite comfort food episodes for 50 years, and just, I mean, this is all about Computer Crisis. So Natira's on this ship. She's the leader of this planet/ship. The Oracle has kind of taken them on the wrong route, and they're just going through space. And they all think they're a planet, but no, they're actually a ship. Just a really, really cool concept for 1968. And for me, it's just a really stimulating episode. It's got this great time capsule of 1960s sci-fi style and story and pacing. And yeah, the Oracle, it's just it's going to destroy itself and run into this planet, Darren 5, and basically Kirk and Spock have to figure out a way to get inside the computer and fix it. They find the Oracle room, the hidden book of the people and the creators. Really, really cool altar. I just love the Oracle. The Oracle. Yeah, You Are Not of Yonada. One of my favorites. Alex, what's your take on For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky? It's an amazing 60s concept for an episode, right? Like take an asteroid, make it hollow, but have the people inside of it not think that it's hollow, and have the whole thing run by, sort of a slightly crazy computer. And it's also a cool McCoy episode. So there's very little not to like about this episode. And of course, what a classically amazing TOS title. It was picked one time previously on TrekRanks for top 5 coolest episode titles. Dana, what's your take on this one?
Like the original series, it's so many good high concept episodes that are just, I think, classic and like really, really kind of put forward this sci-fi legacy. And I think this is kind of one of those things that probably before then it's not really something that you would think about, at least in mainstream TV. And it's, I think, has a legacy. Yeah, for sure. And my 5 words on hashtag was this great moment where the Oracle
talking to them and says, "Learn to be our enemy before you learn what it means to be our friend." And he just zaps them.
I am Captain Kirk of the Starship Enterprise. This is my medical officer, Dr. McCoy. My first officer, Mr. Spock.
For what reason do you visit this world?
We come in friendship.
Then learn what it means to be our enemy before you learn what it means to be our friend.
Really, really cool. Great, really incredibly produced episode. Okay, let's go to the soup round. Alex, what's your number 3 pick?
Eat your soup, courtesy of a loyal establishment. Jolan True.
Okay, number 3. 5-word summary. Turns out writing is hard. # Insurrection Alpha. This is Star Trek Voyager, Season 3, Episode 25, Worst Case Scenario. And I promise I didn't pick this just because it was pure Jim bait.
Yeah, I love this episode, but yeah, that is fantastic. This fits your Prime Directive perfectly.
Crisis is on the main ship. It's Voyager. It involves the holodeck, but isn't confined entirely to the holodeck, because in the kind of end game, if they don't kind of solve the program the right way, it will destroy the holodeck, and presumably, a piece of the ship will go along with it. And an organic being must be ultimately responsible, and that is Seska in this case. Also, a really fun comfort food episode of Star Trek. It's cool to kind of see the sort of alternate take on what early Star Trek Voyager could have been like, in a really fun way, and the resolution is fun, and the episode itself is fun. It's a really cool penultimate episode for Season 3 of Voyager.
Love me some Seska. Dana, what's your take on Worst Case Scenario?
I love this episode. It's one of my favorites. I always love when Star Trek gets a bit meta and makes a bit of fun of itself, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it does that well with the scene too, where they it's almost like a video game where they start dropping in like a fire extinguisher to put out the fire, and messages on the board to tell Tuvok and Tom to go to like the weapons locker and stuff. This is brilliant. I love your Prime Directive, Alex, and this one matches up to it perfect. We love Martha Hackett. We love Worst Case Scenario. There's so many of my comfort food episodes getting picked here.
Yeah, can't go wrong with Seska.
Turns out we love a good Computer Crisis.
Fantastic.
What are we doing in the brig? I have no idea. We haven't given the computer instructions to create a location yet.
Hello, Tuvok. I've been expecting you. If you can see me, you've obviously reopened the narrative parameters file of the tactical scenario you've been working on.
How do you know that? You're a hologram.
That's right. A holographic representation of Seska, one of the Maquis shipmates you betrayed. I would have thought all that time you spent spying on us might have given you a little more insight into the Maquis. But after looking over what you've already written, I can see you need a little help. So I've created this representation of myself to guide you through the rest of the program.
There is no more program.
There is now. I finished writing it for you, with a few revisions of my own.
Revisions?
To start with, the holodeck is now sealed. Your friends will find it very difficult to get you out of here. And the safety protocols are off, which means if I shoot you, and I am going to shoot you, you'll die. But not just yet. You've got 10 seconds to run.
Okay, Dana, what's your number 3?
All right, so we may have seen this one before, but my 6 words are, can I teach you a lesson? # you got it.
Hi, can I teach you a lesson?
And so because I had no time yesterday to put this together, I have exactly 1 bullet point about what I wanted to say, and it's 2 words. And those 2 words are absolutely chaotic. And I think that sums it up perfectly.
Listen, we talked about it a little bit already, but the Badgie concept, it was so well executed. And my favorite thing about Badgie is the way they brought him back for the finale. Because that was, it was just so smart, where it was like, I've already started making 3 viruses that can infect the Packlet ship, but you have to do it manually. I mean, just that story thread was really, really well done. Obviously, leading to the death of Shax, but also to some Rutherford heroics. I I love Badgie. I think it's going to be one of the most memorable things about Lower Decks.
It's one of the standouts of Lower Decks for me.
And there's no doubt in my mind he's going to come back some more. So, Alex, any other thoughts on Badgie and Terminal Provocations?
Pitch perfect casting of Jack McBrayer, 100%. The other thing I really like about this episode that's not Badgie related is the way in which sort of the problems compound on themselves throughout the episode, right? It starts off as this sort of quite small problem that because of Fletcher and because of the holodeck, you know, sort of snowballs into this quite a serious situation by the end of the episode. And I think that's a really cool kind of exploitation of the Lower Decks concept of the ways in which some of the small decisions that our junior crew members are making, where on our other ships, they're always making the right decisions at all times, can actually have quite serious knock-on effects for the senior staff on the bridge.
Yes, well said. And I'm going to snap your neck. Okay, let's go to my round 3 pick. 5 words and a hashtag. This one is infamous. You're not of the body, hashtag. The will of Landru. Of course, it is Landru and the return of the Archons from TOS Season 1. I mean, the festival, the Archons, the body, you will be absorbed. Joy be with you, peace and contentment. I mean, this is an iconic episode of Trek, similar to my number 4 pick, and has a classic Kirk talking a computer to death scene, which you knew was going to be on my list. It's just so memorable. Really cool mystery happening with another computer taking over another society, like in my For the World is Hollow pick. And I love, too, that this also gets the Lower Deck treatment because Landru comes back at the beginning of No Small Parts, and they set up these old scientists joke with Freeman just saying, don't listen to this computer. So great. Anyway, Landru, he's all about a world without hate, without fear, without conflict. But Kirk sets it up like, well, you can't have those things without having some level of creativity, and he turns it on that without creativity and growth, there is no life. Thus, you are the evil and you need to absorb yourself, which he does. Fantastic stuff. Alex, what's your take on the return of the Archon?
Yeah, this is a fascinating episode in terms of the way in which it presents sort of some of those ideas that are expanded upon in later Star Treks around, you know, what does it mean to create a utopia, right? I mean, I think Kirk's point is you can't just create a utopia that doesn't kind of have a role in it for some of the darker notions and elements of human nature, and because if you do, you've created this utterly robotic society that just has the red hour every now and again. And so I think it's a really insightful comment on what it means to, you know, sort of deal with the human nature as we work and approach, you know, some kind of better society. And on an entirely frivolous note, my favorite moment of the return of Landru in No Small Parts is the little sign that's hanging off of one of the computer knobs, which just says, "Do not obey, Jim Kirk."
That's right.
Amazing.
So good. So good. Dana?
This is a really good episode. And it's actually, I just Googled it quickly. It's in the first season, which I didn't think.
Yeah.
And it's such a good episode for, like, really just the introduction to Star Trek. It's just the 22nd episode. So, okay, it's somewhat into the season, but still, you know, having those good concepts so early on in its run is really, really cool. And I think Deep Space Nine played on this really well with showing the dark side of utopia. So we kind of revisit those themes later on, like 30 years later. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, they do a really good job of kind of just talking about how, I mean, I think Spock literally says, without creativity, there can be no life. Something very similar to that. Okay, let's go to round 2. Alex, what's your number 2 pick?
5-word summary. The names Bashir, Julian Bashir. Yes. Hashtag a lot of kick for a 45 Dom. This is Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 4, Episode 9, Our Man Bashir. which has to be one of the best James Bond spoofs ever done by any franchise ever.
Perfection. And this is a computer crisis.
Yeah.
It's a computer crisis. It takes place on the main ship, or the main station in this case, Deep Space Nine. It involves the holodeck, but not entirely confined to the holodeck, because the using up all of the computer power to store the personalities, the transporter patterns of the crew members means the whole station gets taken down, and an organic being is ultimately responsible in the True Way, I think is the name of the terrorist group who bombed the runabout and caused the problem in the first place. I mean, just everything about this episode, the interplay between Bashir and Garak, the opportunity for each of the Deep Space Nine, well, for most of the Deep Space Nine main cast to sort of let loose and have fun with their characters. Kira playing the Russian colonel, Cisco, Avery Brooks turning in just the most high quality, hammiest of James Bond villain performances as Hippocrates Noah there, and Colomini as Falcon, the henchman, Michael Dorn being the sort of the like card player, just everything about it, and just the the music and the gags and the gadgets. It's all just so James Bondy, and just so, again, just it's funny, for a list that's all about computer crises, there are a lot of really fun episodes, and this is another one. It's just really a lot of fun.
I mean, this is classic, and it's another real comfort food episode. This is totally rewatchable, and I said this for another episode, that I love when they bring this back. I think it's in a simple investigation with Odo, when Odo goes to get some advice. He goes to get love advice from Bashir, and he's in the back of the limo. So another great use of that character and that setup. But I really like that this one is all about, the problem here is about that memory storage, and how do they move it, and how do they get it back in, and how do they solve that computer issue. So really perfect pick. Dana, what's your take?
It's one of my favorite Deep Space Nine episodes, and it's, like you said, it's the comfort food episode. If you're feeling down, you just put it on, and it's a lot of fun. In fact, I think it's slightly better than some James Bond movies themselves.
That's definitely true. Definitely true.
But Avery Brooks is just perfect in this episode.
He is genius. Fantastic pick. Dana, what's your number 2 pick?
Okay, so 5 words. We're knee deep in desserts. # Kirk is a jerk. And it's Practical Joker from the animated series.
So legit.
So basically, the Enterprise goes through an energy field, and it messes the computer up, and then the computer turns into a Practical Joker. And that's where the Kirk is a jerk written on the back of Kirk's shirt comes from. And I actually cosplayed that in Birmingham a couple of years ago, and nobody got it, and people got really angry at me on Twitter. So, whoops. But it's such a weird episode, and it's so much fun.
I remember that. I was at that convention, and I'm looking up right now to see where I have this ranked. Right in the middle. Yeah, I got it number 12. Because this is actually not that bad an episode. It's pretty. I mean, it's a little bit out there. It's very of the animated series, but this is a classic Computer Crisis. And I think when we asked this question last week at the end of episode 109, one of our guests said Practical Joker, because it's all about the computer just being out of whack. Yep. I love it. Alex, any memory of Practical Joker?
Yeah, it's a nice blend of what they were trying to do with the animated series, which was an episode that at once would appeal to a Saturday morning audience of kids, but also would sort of be in the kind of classic Star Trek vein. I mean, how well any animated series episode necessarily, sort of completes that objective is certainly open to a significant amount of debate. But yeah, this is a fun one.
My 5 words and a hashtag. This is everybody knows how I feel about the animated series not being my favorite. This episode ranking so high, hashtag, says everything about TAS. Okay, let's go to my round 2 pick. 5 words and a hashtag. Standard set by Unhinged Daystrom. Hashtag one of Trek's most compelling characters ever. It is Richard Daystrom in the M5 computer in the Ultimate Computer from TOS Season 2. And the thing I love about this episode so much is this performance from William Marshall as Richard Daystrom. Such a absolutely compelling character. The performance is so strong. And the big reveal here, of course, is when you realize that he's taken memory engrams from a human brain and he's used that to kind of break the code for the M5 to work as well as it does. And then, of course, they realize, he used his own memory engrams, and this guy is completely unhinged. So really, really great episode of Trek. Top 20 for me for TOS. Love the Captain Dunsel stuff. I love Kirk in this. And I'll say this, I never really realized this until I was rewatching it recently. The original 7 TOS stars are all on the bridge in multiple scenes in this episode. It's really cool because they pretty much have emptied out the ship from everybody else. So you've got Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Scotty, Sulu, Chekhov, and Uhura all working together on the bridge at one time in a couple of scenes. And it's really that really stood out to me. So I just love this episode. The M5 computer is legendary, and DC Fontana is the script, wrote the script for this one. It's just a fantastic episode of Trek. Alex, what's your take on the Ultimate Computer?
Oh, so glad you picked this one. When you first mentioned the topic to me, this was the very first episode that came to mind as a pickable episode. Didn't quite meet my prime directive, no holodeck, but I mean, what a classic episode. And, not just the character stuff, but also this is one of those episodes where, you really do start to sense Star Trek developing its swagger around the fact that, it sort of is this established kind of universe now, and the story is taking place in that established universe, and the audience sort of knows it and understands it a little bit because now you've got these other Constitution class ships. I mean, I know they had either been referenced in previous episodes or appeared in previous episodes in the case of the Constellation and the Doomsday Machine, but like that was just one showing up. This is now like, look, there's a fleet here. And can you imagine in the 1960s with the limited budgets they had to kind of and the fact that they'd only really done kind of 2-3 sort of ships as part of a story prior to that. Now you're doing one that's got 6, 7, 8. I mean, it just is it sort of takes that sort of use of special effects and production values to the next level in terms of thinking about what this ultimately means for Star Trek that comes after.
Yeah, I never thought about that. It's actually a pretty big world building episode in terms of that.
Totally.
Well, yeah, kind of stretching what we've seen before. Dana?
I actually almost picked this one too. This is really what my first thought when you said Computer Crisis. So yeah. I think we're all on the same page. But to me, it feels almost very 1950s sci-fi, which I really, really like about it. It's got that extra classic feel, and it's just well done. And with the main cast all being on the bridge, I never actually really noticed that before. It's really cool.
I have never noticed it before, but I mean, think about it for a second. All 7 of them were on the bridge, and they all have something to do. They all have a line. They all say something, and it's very rare that you get Scotty and McCoy and both Chekhov and Sulu all there at once. It was
because Scotty usually comes on the bridge when like Kirk and Spock are having like a weird crisis on the planet.
And then McCoy as well. So really, really cool. Okay, let's go to our round 1 picks. Alex, can't wait to hear this. What's number 1?
Okay, 5 words. You can find him at 221B. Hashtag an opponent who can defeat Data. I'm not picking Ship in a Bottle. I am picking Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 2, Episode 3, Elementary Dear Data. Because how can you talk about Moriarty without talking about him twice on his 2 different appearances? Yeah, this one is such a great I love Elementary Dear Data. The fact that it's, the sort of conceit of it is Data and Geordi want to have a good time playing Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson on the holodeck, but like as an android, Data can't really get into the part because it's all too easy for him since he has, instant recall and can easily deduce things even better than Holmes himself could have. And so the idea of then sort of inadvertently, and Geordi, of course, is the organic ultimately responsible for it because he asked the computer to create an opponent capable of defeating Data, sets this whole, story in motion that results in the creation of Moriarty, who again, even in this episode is not your standard villain. He is quite an empathetic character, despite the fact he's a little more sinister in this one than he is in Ship in a Bottle. But you still do feel for him in the situation that he finds himself in because he didn't choose or ask for this. And so it really is sort of a classic computer crisis in that regard. And do the crew of the Enterprise do a great job of solving it? I don't necessarily think so, because they sort of convince Moriarty to turn himself off, and we see that that's not, that wasn't a great solution once he's turned back on in the 6th season, but still just a fabulous episode of Star Trek The Next Generation.
Well, I guess the outcome, you make a good point there, but I always say one of my favorite things about this episode is the conclusion, or it's basically just Picard just explains to them, hey, here's the reality, man. We don't need any fisticuffs. We don't need, any drama. This is just the reality of the situation. And he accepts it. And that's the end. I always have loved that. I think that's you don't see a lot of that in storytelling narrative ever. But yeah, you're right. It kind of ended up not really working out for him or the crew when he got reactivated. Dana, Elementary Dear Data.
This episode, I think, is very interesting in another way, in the sense that it's kind of, to me, that turning point for Pulaski and her kind of perception of Data. I think this is where she kind of realizes, like, oh, maybe he is more human than I think.
Yeah,
I think that's a very interesting character episode for her.
It's definitely, yeah, you're right, because at the end, she definitely comes around a little bit more.
Because it's just that, like, tiny little nudge.
Yep. Because it starts with her just being so disrespectful. So much. All right. Dana, what's your number one pick?
Okay, so my number one pick. Now, you did not stipulate that it had to be a computer crisis for the good guys.
Ooh.
Yes. So 5 words. Klingons in your grandma's house. # loud and distracting. And it is the sabotage scene from Star Trek Beyond.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it. Anytime I can talk about Star Trek Beyond and that scene, I just love it.
This scene is absolutely bonkers. And I remember the first time when I went to see it in theaters, I was just like, is this for real? Is this happening?
Hold steady, Mr. Sulu. Brace yourselves, everybody. Spock, stand by to drop out of formation. Scotty, you all queued up back there?
Aye, sir. Ready to broadcast at 57.7 megahertz.
Made your choice, Lassie?
I have the beat and shouting.
And it is so crazy. It's like out of a B movie. It's just ridiculous and over the top. And in that sense, I think it's like very original series, because the original series does have a lot of high concept stuff, but then they also have a lot of really weird stuff that happens. And I think that part of Beyond really, really spoke to me in the weird part of Star Trek.
Let's make some noise. That's a good choice.
If you guys know anything about me, you know that I love weird, bad movies. So this speaks to me on a whole other level, and it's perfection.
I do know that about you, and you will too if you follow Static Warp Bubble on Twitter. I love old classic sci-fi, and you're so right. This is a very B-movie moment. A lot of people critique this, like, oh, you're going to play a song, and that's it. It's not so much about the what as it is the execution. And I'm sorry, come on. This is so much fun, this final scene, the way it's presented, the visuals, the just explosive visceralness of everything happening. I love this moment. It's all-time great Trek. And the fact that it connects back to Sabotage and the first Kelvin movie.
And, the Beastie Boys.
And the Beastie Boys and the whole bit, yep. Alex, what's your take?
I love Beyond. It's probably my third favorite Star Trek movie. And this scene is great because for if someone were to just describe it to you, you would listen to that and you'd go, there's no way that's any good, right? There's no way that works. That's so ridiculous. And yet, when you watch it in context in the movie, it works perfectly. Not just in terms of, keeping that kind of high fun energy around the movie as a whole, but also the way that it ties back to, Jim, as you were saying, the first appearance of that song very close to the beginning of Star Trek 2009. And so all around, and you've also got, McCoy and Spock off in the little version of it. And there's for me, there's nothing not to like about either this scene or this movie as a whole.
Yeah. It's fun. Is it the best thing ever in Star Trek? No, but it's a lot of fun. And I definitely respect that.
Totally.
I do too. And I love this outside the box pick, kind of the flip of these drone ships. And hey, you got your own Computer Crisis happening right now because you guys thought you had this great system, but this RF frequency is bringing you down. So really, really good. I love it. Okay, let's go to my round one pick. And never has there been a pick in TrekRanks history that is more about what I always say, an episode that I just really want to talk about for once, as opposed to being an episode that I really, truly think is one of the great, episodes in Trek history, or even a great Computer Crisis. So this pick is that for me, 5 words and a hashtag. Announce yourself to the custodian, hashtag 3rd level clearance. And it's the custodian computer from TNG season 1, When the Bow Breaks, which is, I think this is the first time this episode's ever even been mentioned on TrekRanks. When the Bow Breaks. So I am not a big fan of kid episodes and kid storylines, and this is a pretty clunky episode in that regard with all the kid actors. But the main reason I'm picking this is because people kind of forget that this ends up being like a Computer Crisis episode for the Aldeans, who are living on their secret cloaked world. And this episode at the very end has one of the most underrated visual effects shots in early Trek, if not all Trek, because it's really, really, really cool. So there's this scene where they figure out that basically the computer, nobody on the planet knows how to work this computer anymore because they've just been living in luxury for hundreds of years and just kind of going on. Nothing ever breaks, so they don't have to learn how to fix it, kind of thing. So Wesley gets in touch with the custodian, this computer, this advanced power system. At the end, there's this fantastic composite effect shot where it's the work of all these behind the scenes Trek legends like Rick Sternbach, Rob Legato, Gary Hutzel, Michael Kuda, all these legends. And if you don't remember the shot, you should check it out. It's shot from this really cool high angle, and the characters are really small. They're coming through some doors that open, and it's shot with the natural light behind it. It's really dark, and the shadows. And there's this really cool model next to it that's just this kit bash of like video and equipment and whatever. And it's shiny. It's just really impressive. So that's why I'm picking this, because that is a really, really cool shot. And the custodian's kind of a cool concept that the Aldeans have basically wanted to steal these kids because they can't procreate anymore because of the radiation, and they can't fix the computer, and now they have to turn it off. So when the bow breaks, there we go. And special shout out to Mackenzie Westmore, Michael Westmore's daughter and the host of Face Off, who was in this episode as a little kid as well. So lots happening. Alex, what's your take on When the Bow Breaks and the custodian computer?
There's another great effect shot in this episode too, when they sort of push the Enterprise away. They end up reusing that shot a couple of times in various different episodes. Yeah, Tin Man and Q-Who as well. But this was the first time it showed up. And if you're doing a rewatch, like, it's still a very impactful shot the first time that you see it. It is a cool concept of an episode. Is it the best execution? Maybe not. I mean, it's TNG season 1 and it's a kid episode mixed together. Like, you probably couldn't ask for 2 worse things, but there is still there are individual moments that are very likable in this episode as a whole, and the custodian itself is a cool idea. That is sort of a very kind of classically TOS concept refreshed up for a TNG audience, and the kind of thing that you would only really find in seasons 1 and somewhat in season 2 of TNG before they started to go in their own direction and do their own thing. So yeah, cool pick.
Yeah, it's a classic redux of TOS computer society kind of crisis. Dana, what's your take on When the Bow Breaks?
I actually completely forgot this episode existed.
So for those of you who forgot, it's they steal all the Enterprise kids and try to make a trade with them.
Yeah, so I remember watching it. I guess I pushed it out of my mind. But from what I remember, it was a good or decent Wesley episode.
It is a decent Wesley episode. That's fair.
I think Wesley got a lot of unfair hate during his run on there. And, I know sometimes his episodes can be a bit extra, but I think his character development overall was kind of good. And I guess you had to start in a place like this to get to where he ended up. So counts for something.
You can check out Wesley Crusher on episode 108 of TrekRanks, the top 5 Crusher episodes. Anyway, this is not a great episode of Star Trek, that's for sure. But I'm telling you, that final shot is worth the price of admission. It's really, really, really clever. For a TV show, first season, low budget or the kind of budget that they have to put a shot like that together, it's impressive. It is impressive. Okay, we are done with that. Let's get into some secondary systems.
Let's see what you can do with the secondary systems.
Alex, what do you got?
Okay, I my list to pick from for this episode was 30, so I'm just going to pick out some highlights that we haven't talked about yet. Evolution, the season 3 premiere from Next Generation with the nanites and Paul Stubbs.
Yeah.
Dreadnought, which I know has been talked about a couple of times on TrekRanks, the Voyager episode with the Cardassian missile that's got its own AI. An O-Ball for Charon from Star Trek Discovery. The great thing about that one is when the universal translator's malfunctioning and everybody's speaking different languages and you can't quite understand what they're saying. Contagion, season 2 of TNG, the appearance of the Iconians. For the uniform, when Eddington basically wipes the computer operating system for the Defiant and they have to rebuild it, and you've got this scene where Nog is talking to the engineering about how to pilot the ship, and that is such a great sequence.
For the uniform is a great pick. I love it.
And The Haunting of Deck 12, which I love as an episode. I think that's a really great episode it's one of my favorites of season 6 of Voyager. And a lot more that have Computer Crisis as part of them.
So many. Dana, how about you?
So I just have a few here. So I have the Discovery episode where the universal translator breaks, where they're all speaking different languages as well. That's a really...
and just for record, that was my toughest cut in Oval for Charon.
Yeah. Yep. And I think there was an episode of Deep Space Nine where there was some slight issue with the translator, but I can't remember if I made that up in my head. And I can't remember if I didn't make it up in my head what episode it's from.
You were thinking of
Babel.
Babel,
okay.
And it's a disease that makes them all speak different, makes them speak in gibberish.
Okay.
By the way, that was one of my first ones I thought of, and then I went back and rewatched it. And it was a little too virusy. It had a computer element, but it was more.
Okay,
virusy.
Yeah. I didn't develop that one further, so I'm glad I didn't. I think there's an episode of Voyager where the gel packs get sick, which I thought was kind of a cool take.
Learning curve, yep, it's on the list.
Yep. The Landrew episode and Dead Stop.
Yes, awesome. Love it. So, Alex, you mentioned a lot of mine. I had Haunting of Deck 12. That was really tempting because of the electromagnetic life form is inside the computer communicating with the ship. It's really cool.
Captain Janeway, report to main engineering.
Another one of my favorites that really tough to cut was Taste of Armageddon, which obviously with the computer warfare happening there. 2 AI episodes that I thought about: The Changeling with Nomad and I Mud with Norman. And I thought about I had Civil Defense. I would have picked Vol and the Apple, from TOS, but I just picked it on TOS Guilty Pleasure, so I couldn't do it again. And then I had a special shout out. I had Contagion as well, but that was on Buzzer Beaters and a couple others. A special shout out to The Thaw and the computer simulation with Fear that had to be outsmarted by Janeway.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that actually might fit yours, Alex, almost. It's kind of, It's not a holodeck, but it's a simulation.
And I think there's one more episode we should call out, and our friend Claire will kill us if we don't, which is All Aboard to New Vertiform City and Emergence, in which the Enterprise D itself literally becomes an alien and leaves itself.
That's a pretty good Computer Crisis, too.
I mean, it's not a great episode, but it is a good Computer Crisis.
Well, frequent TrekRanks guest Adam Drozen will disagree with you.
That's true.
Sure,
yeah, he loves
favorite.
it too.
Okay, awesome job. I knew this would be a cool episode for 110, but now let's get into our regeneration cycle and go through some stats and a recap of our picks.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
Okay, Alex, break down your 5 picks.
Yeah, number 5 is Terminal Provocations from Star Trek Lower Decks. Number 4 is Booby Trap from Star Trek The Next Generation. Number 3 is Worst Case Scenario from Star Trek Voyager. Number 2 is Our Man Bashir from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And number 1 is Elementary Dear Data from Star Trek The Next Generation.
So your holodeck theme, really, really cool. You had 2 from TNG, 1 from Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and Lower Decks. And Dana, how about you?
My number 5 is Ship in a Bottle from Next Generation. Number 4 is Civil Defense from Deep Space Nine. Number 3 is Terminal Provocations from Lower Decks. Number 2 is Practical Joker from the animated series. And number 1 is the Sabotage Scene from Star Trek Beyond.
Spectacular. So you spread it around. You had 1 from TNG, Deep Space Nine, Lower Decks, the animated series, and the Kelvin timeline. That is a great mix. And my 5 picks, number 5 was Dead Stop from Enterprise. Number 4 was For the World is Hollow, and I Have Touched the Sky from TOS. Number 3, also from TOS, Return of the Archons. Number 2, also from TOS, The Ultimate Computer. And number 1, When the Bow Breaks from TNG. So I had 1 from TNG, 1 from Enterprise, and no surprise, I had 3 from TOS. Could have definitely done just an all TOS list for myself. So some of the stats, I tried to break it down by like how many times you were fixing a computer or destroying it, but it just got too mixed because some of them are a little bit of both. But we had this I didn't expect like a holosuite theme. So there was, or a holodeck theme. So there were 7 episodes with some level of holodeck tie-in. There were 3 episodes of Kirk talking a computer to death. There was no AI and no kind of straight robot picks, unless you consider Moriarty an AI, maybe Badgie, I don't know. And then there was just the 1 duplicate, Terminal Provocations from Lower Decks. And the series count was nothing from Short Treks, Picard, or Discovery. We really spread it around here. There was 1 each from the animated series, Kelvin Timeline, Enterprise, and Voyager. 2 from Deep Space Nine, 3 from TOS, and 4 from TNG. So pretty good cross-section of all the series being represented there. All right. As we do every week, we've once again been hit by a temporal distortion. So before we can depart, it's time to hear from you.
The temporal distortions are fracturing space-time throughout the ship.
Cause? Unknown.
We know the cause, Mr. Tuvok. It's all the amazing feedback that we continue to receive from our listeners here at TrekRanks. And this week's temporal distortion has sent us back to episode 103 in our top 5 Badmirals, which was a super, super fun topic. So the first one here is from Ben Nicholson, who is at Ben Kerr Now on Twitter. And his 5 words and a hashtag for each of his picks. I could turn back time, hashtag save Carrie. And it's Admiral Janeway. Save Carrie. That's interesting. She would have saved Carrie. Yes. If no, wait, Carrie still would have died. I'm not following that hashtag, right? Because even if Janeway had come back, Carrie was already dead. Yeah, he was already dead. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 4, he destroyed his first love. # Space Cowboy Kirk. Definitely a bad role. Number 3, 3 nacelles and holds grudge. # first to refuse old Picard. It's the alternate Riker from All Good Things.
Boo.
Number 2, where no one has gone before. # you can't see me. And it's Pressman. Admiral Pressman, he sucks. Number 1, Cloud in every silver lining. # for Starfleet, and it's of course Admiral Satie. She is terrible. Great list from Ben. And then this one, I don't know any of these songs, so I'll be real clear right off the bat, but it is Badmirals by song titles from friend of the show Adam Sanders, who is at MetsFan1701 on Twitter. So he had Admiral Marcus, Bad to the Bone, # squish. I know Bad to the Bone, but I don't know what squish means. Admiral Cornwell, A Bad Goodbye. Rear Admiral Satie, Bad Influence. Galactic High Commissioner Ferris, Bad Attitude, that's for sure. Ambassador Fox, Bad Timing, that's really good. Commodore Decker, Bad Obsession. And Commodore O, Born to be Bad. So, I like that. Clever list from Adam. Great stuff. Once again, those picks more than enough to clear ourselves from this week's temporal distortion. So as always, I want to thank everyone for all your great responses to the TrekRanks podcast. Please keep your list coming to me at TrekRanks on Twitter so we can retweet them. But we also want to hear from you. So put together your own list of top 5 computer crises or a list from any of our past shows. Give us a call at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527 at 609-512-LLAP. So hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of TrekRanks. And on the next episode of TrekRanks, we are returning to our abstract series with our 3rd abstract topic. It's episode 111. So naturally we're doing abstract 1. Completely wide open canvas. The topic is 1, whatever that means to you. So Alex and Dana, if you had to choose something that you would define as an abstract 1 off the top of your head, what would it be, Alex?
I mean, obviously, the absolute most obvious answer is 1 himself from the episode of Star Trek Voyager Drone, the 2nd episode of the 5th season, where 7 of 9's nanoprobes merge with the Doctor's hollow emitter to create this entirely new Borg drone, and he calls himself 1.
A great pick, or 1 the episode.
Or 1 the episode, exactly, yep.
It's always so confusing. 1 the character from the episode Drone, not the episode 1. Dana, how about you? Anything off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, the first thing I would think of is loneliness. So I came up with Archer in the future in the library, and he's the only one from his time there.
I love that. And I'll tell you that there's definitely a way to look at this as kind of singular or lonely or alone as an aspect of 1, to say the least. This is one of the broadest topics we've ever tackled on TrekRanks, for sure. So definitely looking forward to that one. We've already recorded it. It's really awesome. Trust me. Trust me. Okay, so before we wrap it up, a huge thanks to Alex Perry and Dana Kenedy. Great to have you guys both on the show.
I was wondering if you could show me how to access these subspace communications logs.
And we're going to do that right now, Neelix. So any final Trek subspace communications, either one of you guys want to relay before we depart? Alex, what do you got?
Thank you, Jim. Always a pleasure. I'll see you next time.
Yep. And don't forget, check out Weekly Trek here on the Tricorder Transmissions. Dana, thanks for coming on at short notice.
Yep. This was a lot of fun, and it was really fun to put it together in just like a couple hours. So
I promise I'll give you more heads up time next time.
You know what? It actually worked out fine. So
awesome. Well, thanks for helping us out, and thanks for everyone for engaging with us here on episode 110 of the TrekRanks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
The analysis of your vessel is complete. Select a method of compensation to begin the repair process.
Who am I speaking with?
Your inquiry was not recognized.
Is there someone here I can speak with?
Your inquiry was not recognized.
I don't think there's anyone back there.
Perhaps the station's automated.
Are you saying you can repair all our systems?
Select a method of compensation to begin the repair process.
Just want to remind everyone again that the entire TrekRanks catalog is available for you to download and listen to at TrekRanks.com and on your podcast player of choice. Our episodes never get carbon dated, so check out the topics you've missed and maybe just want to listen to again over at TrekRanks.com. And a reminder to check out our friends 5-Year Mission at 5yearmission.net. They're writing a song for every episode of Star Trek, and you won't believe how great their music is. They also have a podcast at the Trek Geeks Network, so seek them out. You won't regret it.
In a sense, you did give Moriarty what he wanted.
In a sense. But who knows? Our reality may be very much like theirs, and all this might just be an elaborate simulation running inside a little device sitting on someone's table. Well, we have a newborn star to study. Mr. Barclay, we'll keep that safe.
Aye, sir. Computer end program.